Hello. What's up, Psychonauts? I wanted to kind of just story tell today. Let's go into the past. Let's tell a story. Let's tell the story of my first ever psychedelic experience. I mean, this whole channel is based on psychedelic experiences. I might as well tell you the story of the first one that I ever had, which was an acid trip. Okay? Yeah, my first time tripping was on acid. And here's how it went. So this happened quite a while ago, and it was a New Year's Eve. And this all happened rather spontaneously. You know, it was already evening time, and I had no idea that I was going to be spending the rest of my night having my first psychedelic experience that would forever change my life. I got the invitation to go have an acid trip with some friends. So I was excited. I was like, yes, let's do this. And I was just it was me and 3 other people. So 4 of us. This is the entire trip is spent sitting on the couches with these people watching movies. These people, they're my friends. They were friends. Again. Don't worry about it. I'm just trying to talk to you, okay? We watched 3 movies back to back, and they were Ghost Ship, Shrooms, and Chasing Amy. Okay? I had no say over any of these. I don't know. I was not part of the decision process. And I wasn't really that interested in the movies, especially the first 2. Especially the first one. I think I kind of completely disassociated from that movie. The first 2 were kind of like horror movies, which you would think is not really the best thing to watch during psychedelic experiences. I feel the urge to go on a sidetrack here. I typically would avoid just spending trips watching movies. There are a few particular movies that I think are worth watching while tripping, and maybe that's for a whole nother video, but typically I think they're more enjoyable during the calm down anyway, and not like the main part of the experience. You're not going to really be able to actually watch the movie if you're sufficiently tripping anyway, which was the case. I dosed, I don't really remember the exact dose. I think I took like 3 hits, but it was definitely not 300, okay? It was definitely not that. It was not 300 micrograms. So I don't really know what the exact dosage was, but, and it's a good thing it wasn't 300 micrograms, honestly. That's probably a bit much for a first time. But I dosed sometime before midnight, but it actually took a while before I realized I was tripping. I think now when I trip, I've developed more of a psychedelic sensitivity, so I can feel the effects. I notice the effects a little bit sooner, but it took a while for me to like really be like, okay, I was just kind of waiting around like, okay, what's gonna happen? Am I tripping? I remember this point where it hit me, and I was like, I'm tripping. And I mean, what is it to even trip? Because I don't know if it was anything like I expected, because I think people who aren't familiar with psychedelics kind of get into their head that tripping is it's about the hallucination. You hallucinate. That's what tripping is. It's hallucinating, but that's really not what it is. That's not to say that there's not visuals. I did remember noticing some visuals, just mainly I remember noticing like some of those distortions in perception, almost like an Alice in Wonderland effect, like things like feeling bigger and smaller, further away and closer, or just like the breathing in the walls, or just like that slight color enhancement. A lot of the visuals are very subtle. They can develop into more intricate psychedelic geometries, but hallucination is not really the core component of the psychedelic experience, and I was finding that out. It's this shift in perception. It almost feels like an opening up. Like your awareness is usually concentrated on, you know, like a narrow filter of reality, and all of a sudden everything just opens up. And I remember like immediately liking the headspace. Like it really felt like home. This is another thing. I remember in this first trip having this feeling of familiarity. And I know I had this too, because I remember one of the things I was searching after this first trip was, why does LSD feel so familiar? and other people have felt this too. I don't know if it's just something, I mean, likely there's just something like neurochemically going on that makes you feel that way, but it's so strange. It's almost like I had entered into some perception. It was like this lost perception, like I had been there before. Like I had perceived the world in this way before, but I had just forgotten how to. That's almost what it felt like. And I remember, like, as I was like approaching the peak, this was probably during the peak, there was one point where I start crying. I remember I started crying out of just pure and utter bliss. And that's really like what it is. It's bliss. It's not just pleasure. Like psychedelics, I think it's important to note that psychedelics don't just give you pleasure to the nth degree. I think they would be much more dangerous if they did. But they can cultivate a sense of bliss due to that shift in awareness. And you're just aware of yourself and your life and other people and the entire universe in such a way that it all becomes more beautiful. And there really is like I don't know, there's a gratefulness in it. And I remember this too, I remember just feeling such a sense of love. I remember feeling like, you know, I can't believe I was ever dissatisfied before. You know, I already have everything that I need. You know, I had been, before this experience, I think I had been engaging in maybe not the best behaviors. And, you know, I was almost like I was lost in some way, like I was chasing something. And then I felt like this was, I don't know, I'm kind of losing my words here, but, you know, language in the psychedelic experience, are not always the easiest to put together because so much of this just completely goes beyond words. But there was just this sense of like complete love and wholeness. It was almost like a wholeness, like, you know, I already have everything I need and I always have. And why was I looking in all these different directions for it when I was already right here? And this was just such a profound experience for me. I mean, this was really what, after this experience, I crossed the event horizon of the rabbit hole and there was no going back. I remember after this, you know, I was completely enthralled with like understanding the psychedelic experience, and I started reading more, I started listening. This is probably when I got more into like the philosophical and spiritual side of psychedelics as well, and I would just read so many trip reports, and it was immediately something that felt like I wanted to pursue. Like there was, I've probably said this before, but it was like the most interesting thing that had ever happened to me. Like it was really a piece of reality that felt like it was worth pursuing. I have talked about this before. I felt like even before this, I was on a quest to understand reality. I was a seeker. Like I really wanted to understand truth and understand the nature of reality, the nature of the universe. I wanted to understand my own self, my own mind. And this really felt like this experience had presented me with almost the perfect tool to do that. And that's not to say that it was something that I used excessively. I didn't have my second trip until later that spring, like May. So I went a long time after this first experience before I even had another one. And I mean, I didn't have my third one till like that fall. So I mean, a lot of these experiences are very spaced out. When I say it's a tool, that doesn't mean you have to overuse it. That period of integration is really where those changes come. I do remember also when I started to come down, I remember like saying something to myself and I was like, oh, I can think again. Which is kind of funny because it's not necessarily that you can't think when you're peaking on psychedelics, but it almost does give you that break from the dominance of the thinking mind. And I think that's really kind of what I was expressing. You're able to transcend that thinking mind into a state of more pure awareness, which is a high, like more mental clarity. I mean, if you think too much, the thinking really clouds perception. You can only You can only think so much. What is that? I feel like I remember something that like Alan Watts said. If you think all the time, you'll have nothing to think about but thoughts. I don't know. But you know, I'm naturally kind of a thinker, but it was really nice like having this higher perception that was above thinking, that was like a dimension above. Like it was I don't know. Like the thinking mind comes back, you can return to that state, but it's beautiful to have that more unfiltered, pure awareness without the cloud of all these little internal thoughts constantly. But it's still, I mean, it's still such a cerebral mental experience. I think I didn't realize how much of a like a mentally clarifying and stimulating experience it would be. Again, like I said, you know, I think I had probably heard before the trip, or maybe not right before. I think I had probably heard at some point before trying psychedelics that, you know, you'd take an acid trip and there'd be a dragon guarding the refrigerator, and that's baloney. That's bizarre. It's nothing like that. And it's really not so. It's really, I don't know, like it can be fun, it can be giggly, it can be silly, you can laugh, but there's really like a seriousness to it that I didn't realize was gonna happen. And I think I realized that, you know, psychedelics weren't gonna be this recreational thing, that they were really part of something much greater than a recreational pursuit. It's not to say that you can't have fun, because I do enjoy tripping a lot of times, and it's good to have fun, but I think if you're not seeking something beyond that, you know, psychedelics really aren't gonna be of much value to you. But yeah, I mean, that was basically what I can remember from the trip. I remember the come down just lasting so long. Another thing we did, we were watching Archer too at the come down. I remember that. Just I wouldn't go back and spend my trip in that same way, but I was kind of just amateur, inexperienced. I didn't really know how to trip yet. It was just my first experience, and I was just kind of going along with the group in a way of like, this is what everybody's doing. Like now I think I'm more comfortable just, if I was tripping in that same setting again, I'd probably just go off, be like, I'm gonna go off and have an adventure. You guys, you can come if you want. But yeah, it was a good experience overall. There wasn't necessarily much like specific content to it, at least not that I can remember, but it definitely like opened the door to everything that was to come, and it really intensified that little bit of psychedelic curiosity I had before the trip was just completely amplified, and I knew I wanted to pursue this, and here I am, the Psychonaut that you know and love today. So yeah, I think that's all I have for you. I think that basically sums up the story of my first acid trip, my first time tripping, what it was like. So I'm gonna have to end this video before I just say a bunch of words that don't mean anything. So yeah, tell me what you think. What was your first time tripping like? Okay, yeah, bye bye. You'll see me next time.